So everyone is right. I caved. I listened to Heated Rivalry, the book, while I was in lab. So today we're going over a lab presentation about hockey and specifically the prostate. For today's lab presentation, first we will go over what the hell even is smut. 2, my personal experience with prostateception, a visual representation. 3, a PSA to get your prostate checked. 4, did I actually like the book? This includes a shameless plug and maybe a hot take. And finally, 5 is me lying again because I love lying. Note that this is less of a review and more of a reaction because I listened to this while I was in lab, so I couldn't really conjure a literary analysis. This is also a science lesson. We'll see why later. There's also no mention of hockey in this, even though I titled this presentation that it's about hockey. Again, I love lying, so. First, this is my first experience reading smut. According to the Cambridge Dictionary, smut is magazines, books, pictures, movies, or jokes that offend some people because they relate to sex. I don't think this is my favorite definition of smut, but this is the one I chose, so we're just going to have to deal with it. So, given that this is my first time reading smut, I will say that I am astonished. I am flabbergasted. I wasn't expecting I don't know what I was expecting. I know it was going to be about sex, but I didn't realize how in-depth all of the descriptions about sex were going to be. The whole entire thing that prompted me making this presentation was listening to Shane's prostate being described in very great detail, and at the end of the book, Ilya eating ass being described in very great detail. I don't know what I was expecting, but anything that I was expecting, it surpassed my expectations. I was taken aback. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Will I ever read smut again? Probably not. I feel like it's not really for me, but I can appreciate it for what it is. The only other smut I will read / listen to is the long game once season 2 comes out. And maybe I should have read it instead of listening to it for my first experience, but the narrator was kind of fire, except for when he voiced Rose. I think his Rose voice was pretty hilarious. Otherwise, I think he did a great job. And throughout the whole thing, I was equal parts scared and intrigued, but mostly inspired. I think my key takeaway from my first smut listening / reading experience is that I should write this because I want to create an empire based on boys kissing, and I feel like that'd be a really great change in my career path and my future trajectory, if that makes sense. So let me paint this picture for you. I'm in lab. One of the cell lines that I work with are prostate cancer cells to look at nuclear morphology. So just imagine me, I'm passaging my cells, I'm imaging my cells, and I'm analyzing it, looking at the computer. I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm listening to Heated Rivalry, the book. I reach chapter 7, and then I just hear this. I hear the narrator talk about this. Let me do my best narrator impression. Shane arched and gasped. Ilya rubbed his fingertip over what had to be Shane's prostate. On the next thrust, Ilya hit Shane's prostate, sending a jolt of pleasure through him. Etc., etc. Ilya's a sex god. They finish, and I go back analyzing. But when I heard the word Shane's prostate, I had like an out-of-body experience. You know, I was thinking about my place in the universe and how I'm looking at prostate cancer cells and how in such great detail I'm hearing about Shane Hollander's prostate. It just felt like the cosmos aligning in some really perverted way. And that is what prompted me to make this presentation, because if we look on the left, this is a very real, accurate representation of how I felt listening to this chapter. I was like, I can't believe that I'm looking at prostate cancer cells while Mr. Shane Hollander's prostate's getting pounded by Ilya Rozanov, you know? It was a very surreal experience, and that's why I'm making this presentation, because I feel like I needed to share this visual with everyone, especially for my scientists. Anyone else studying prostate cancer, you should listen to this book while doing your analysis, because what the fuck even is happening? Anyway, I digress. So I'm going to get into a little bit about science, because I feel like that's kind of the crux of these little podcast sessions for myself, is that I kind of do want to talk about science. So we're going to talk about politically correct prostate cancer. Prostate exams should begin at age 50, and you should get checked around once every year, according to the Cleveland Clinic. Listen, I know that there's a lot of stigma about getting your prostate checked, but there's nothing wrong with having a few fingers up your ass, okay? Whether you're gay or straight, whether or not you have a prostate, there's nothing wrong with having a few fingers up your ass, so let's just get over it. There's something called a Gleason score, so a higher Gleason score means a higher grade of prostate cancer. And what I specifically study is nuclear shape and nuclear morphology. So we know that abnormal nuclear shape increases with increasing Gleason scores. So if we look on the bottom right, it's showing how normally shaped cells are not really considered cancerous, but as we go down to more and more abnormally shaped cells / nuclei, it's a higher grade of prostate cancer. So there's 3 prostate cancer cell lines that I specifically study. First is Ellencap cells, which are early stage cancer. Next is PC3, which is late stage prostate cancer. And finally, we have DU145 cells, which is mostly associated with metastasis to the brain from prostate cancer. I don't have any citations for this, so you're just going to either have to believe me or do your own research, but just don't find me, okay? Don't look up my papers. And if you're my lab member somehow watching this, you never saw this. So these are some of the images that I took and that I was analyzing while listening to Heated Rivalry. From left to right, I have Ellencap, PC3, DU145. These are all stained with hoaxed. The confluency does not matter for those who aren't really in science. You're probably realizing that, oh, there's less cells in the Ellencap and there's way more cells in the DU145. That's just me. I just messed up. I couldn't get the confluencies to be the same while imaging, so just ignore that fact. But what I'm specifically looking at is the shape of the nuclei. So if we look at this top right inset, this red arrow is pointing to this little nuclear protrusion. What we find in many of the cells that we study, we find that these nuclear protrusions are often associated with cellular dysfunction and increased DNA damage. So I'm specifically looking at the composition of that nuclear protrusion in relation to normal nuclei and the rest of the nuclear body. And again, another PSA. This could be Shane's prostate if he doesn't get his exams starting at age 50 and at least once a year past age 50. But given Shane, he probably looks forward to them, so I'm sure that he's going to be fine in the long run. Okay, now let's actually talk about the book. So, I think me listening or me watching the show first is giving me some internal bias. So I'm going to try to separate the two as much as I can, even though I'm going to talk about the show in a little bit. But the first thing that I noticed is that there's so much yearning. I know that there was so much yearning in the show, but at least in the book, it's very easy to write about their internal monologues, dialogues, however you want to call it. So all of the yearning that we see from both Shane and Ilya is a lot more potent, I think. But I think it's also really accentuating the ability of the actors who played Shane and Ilya in the show to convey all of that yearning in probably just their facial expressions or Shane's bottom eyes. That is the power of writing, and that's the power of TV, is being able to convey the same thing in different ways. Again, I'm an author. I love writing, so I love reading Shane and Ilya's inner thoughts. That was one thing I noticed that I really liked about the book. Another thing that I noticed is that Shane is constantly convincing himself he's bisexual. He's been with a lot of women, a lot question mark, because I think he mentions it, but I don't know specifically how many. I like how I like this Shane's inner monologue in the book talking about how he's convincing himself he's bisexual, while in the show it's kind of just scattered in there when he's talking to Hayden about how he had his ex-girlfriend or how he had the thing with Rose. I really like that it was a much more prominent conflict for Shane in the book. Also, again, I kind of watched the show just to see boys kiss, just to see hockey players having sex, but I feel like I must have missed a lot of nuances in some of the scenes. For example, from a quote from the book, it was weird, this domestic scene in reference to Shane experiencing Ilya making him a tuna melt. I feel like I didn't really truly understand the nuance of Shane getting up and leaving and kind of having a sort of mini panic attack after Ilya made him a tuna melt, because he wasn't used to that type of experience, because all their encounters were merely sexual. And I think that plays a lot into Shane's autism, because he kind of likes that structure. He knows what to expect. So when something doesn't follow the routine, it can really work him up and give him a lot of anxiety. So being able to spell all of these things out really explicitly in the book, I thought was really helpful, and it gave me more appreciation for both the storyline and the show. Other things that I found interesting, I talked about this, but my jaw dropped hearing the vivid description of Ilya eating ass. Listen, Oh, I'm gonna move on. I'm not gonna talk about some personal anecdotes here, but just know that I was taken aback. Two, this was hilarious. I didn't. I'm glad that they didn't put this in the club scene because it would have taken away from the drama. But Ilya dancing with that girl in the club and then her saying her boyfriend gets off at seeing her fuck other guys, that was so funny. I think that might have been the funniest part of the book, given that I've watched the show already. I just wasn't expecting it to be such a hilarious punchline in such a serious moment. Three, I liked this quote, Shane always leaked like a fountain. Good quote, you know? That's a good quote and that's a great visual for all the book readers, I think. So overall, the book is a good time. I enjoyed listening to the book. Yeah, I enjoyed listening to the book. Let's say that. This is the part where I do my shameless plug. Guys, listen to my song. I love art, man. I was on the train from Penn Station and I was trying to make a little lyric video for my song because I was really bored. And in the song, I say the words, I paid for porn. Not really, though. But I was trying to make this video, and this poor guy sitting next to me just saw the word porn just like taking up my whole entire computer screen for so long, and he probably thought I was probably a pervert. Which, you know what? Let's let people think what they think. Anyway, listen to my song. It's on this channel, my previous video. It's kind of fire. I'm not a singer, but I like singing, so I guess that makes me a singer, you know? Just, I love art. So this is when I'm going to start talking about the show. Again, I wish I had I wish I had taken more notes during listening to this book, but unfortunately I was taking notes on prostate cancer cells. But what I do know is that I like the show better. Again, I think I'm just biased because I saw the show first, because I wasn't particularly in love with all the sex scenes. I do think the sex scenes are important because it is an integral part of the plot line. It is what builds Shane and Ilya's relationship, and it is what is driving them to want to get closer to each other. But I don't know, I just felt like as emotionally compelled, if not more, from watching the show. I think the book made me had greater appreciation for the story as a whole. But I think if I wanted to go back to either the show or the book, I would much rather choose the show. Also, thank God that they did not give Ilya a bear tattoo in the show. Thank God. Also, I'm saying all this, but let's not discredit Rachel Reed. She wrote the fucking story. I mean, the show wouldn't exist without her fucking story. The story is incredible. This is an incredible story, so all the power to Miss Rachel Reed. She did an amazing job at crafting these characters in this storyline. I know I talked about this. I liked hearing the inner dialogue because I may not have critically thought that hard during the show. Justice for my goat, Svetlana. I adore Svetlana in the show. I wish she had more to do in the book, but I take what I can get. But if there's one thing that I think the book did astronomically better than the show was the cottage. I think that the cottage through to the epilogue, dare I say, a great piece of literature, dare I say, one of the greatest pieces of literature ever written. Listen, it's got to be up there. Shakespeare might have written Romeo and Juliet, but could he have written The Cottage through to the epilogue of Heated Rivalry? I'm not so sure. While listening to this part of the book, I got such an overwhelming sense of solace, peace, and like unadulterated love. It's just such a masterful payoff for all of the pain and suffering that Ilya and Shane went through for the first, what, like 80% of the book. It was just such a pleasant read and a pleasant experience to listen to just hear them coexist together and live their lives together. I think, well, obviously, each episode can only be 50 minutes, so it's very hard to summarize everything that could have happened at the cottage in that short amount of time. So that's why I think the book is a better experience for this specific scene, because I just loved hearing about they're playing pool, you know, they're just talking to each other on the couch. I think that the book did an incredible job at giving us the final taste of romance at the end of a long story of suffering. I joked about Ilya and Shane getting married. Ilya did talk about marriage, him and Shane getting married specifically at the end, which I thought was really cute and really funny because I was like, when are they going to get married? The epilogue, listen, I was shocked when I heard the epilogue because it felt like I was listening to spoilers. I was like, guys, season two's not out yet. How do you know this? But no, this is a book. It's a book to TV show adaptation. Like, I don't know what I was expecting, but what it made me appreciate is Hayden Pike. That guy's hilarious. I'm glad that he's not a homophobe, but he is an Ilya Rosanov hater. And I feel like, listen, I don't know, I'm not on the ice with Ilya, but I feel like if I were on the ice, I would hate his guts. So good for Hayden Pike for standing his ground, but also accepting his best friend. That is an ally. And this is romance, baby. Like the Cottage epilogue, it's romance. It's beautiful. We just want happiness. We yearn for love. We yearn for warmth, and that is exactly what it gave us. And I'm so appreciative of that. But something I do want to get into. This is not a hot take, but this is an observation that I want to talk about. Is the use of the f-slur. It's a double-edged sword, definitely. I think one criticism that people have had that I've thought about the show is that it doesn't really tackle the hyper masculinity and the very intense homophobia within the hockey community, within the sport itself. I think the use of the F slur really brings that to the forefront in the book because that is probably one of the biggest obstacles that both Shane and Ilya had to face while going through this story. But I also think that maybe if you're listen, Rachel Reed is a woman, you know? I'm not gonna say that women can't use the F slur in their media or their literature, but I do think that maybe there's ways to get around it. I don't know if I'm being too soft about this. I don't know what other people think about this. I just feel a little uneasy when you use a slur that doesn't really belong to you, but I do think that it adds to the story. So that's why it's a double-edged sword. I think that having it in the story is compelling and it does bring a new aspect to the story, but I also am like, maybe there's other ways we could have gone around it. Let me know what you think because I'm not entirely sure. So, these are my final thoughts for real this time. I keep saying this is the last time I'm talking about this. This is the last time I'm talking about this. First, my predictions for the long game. It's probably just going to be about Shane and Ilya figuring out how to maintain a relationship in the public eye and in the sport of hockey. I think this is where the use of the F slur could come in a lot. I think the show doesn't really get into the hypermasculinity, homophobia within the hockey scene in the first season, but given that Shane and Ilya are probably going to go public with their relationship and like Mr. Hayden Pike knows and maybe he has a big mouth and he's telling other players, but I think that is probably going to be the central point in the second book slash second season, and I think that's going to be really exciting. Is it going to be as romantic and as yearning as the first season? Probably not, but I think it'll be a lot more real and it'll be a lot more impactful probably for a lot of people. Not saying that the first season wasn't impactful, but it'll probably be a lot more sobering for a lot of people. Other predictions, maybe they just start hating each other. You know, how funny would it be if they just fell out of love and they just started fist fighting on the ice for real? They kiss on the ice in the beginning of the book. At the end of the book, they're fist fighting and they get a divorce. That could happen. Another thing, Ilya's a pilot. He's at the end of the first book, he's like, I want to get my pilot license, and then Shane's like, don't do that, I don't want you to die. Is this foreshadowing? Is Ilya going to get in a helicopter accident, a plane accident, and is he gonna die? And is that where the story's gonna go? That would be awesome. I mean, it wouldn't be awesome, but how fucking funny would that be? The last one, I said this in a previous Heated Rivalry video, but Shane will get pregnant and then they raise a family together. I feel like that's completely plausible. So, just to reiterate, to tie up some final thoughts, as a book, it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. As a storyline, it was incredible. I have to reiterate the romance in the Cottage and epilogue is absolutely top tier. I don't read a lot of romance books, but I feel like that specific part of this specific book is going to stick with me when I think about romance novels and when I want to write my own romance novels, how I'll go about it. And I think let's all say goodbye to Heated Rivalry for now. I think the time has come. We've had a lot of time to digest the first season. I think most people have probably, at least if you're in mass psychosis, have read the book. I'm glad that there is some lasting impact within all of hockey, all of sport, seeing ex-professional athletes come out. I'm not going to say because of Heated Rivalry, but because of the changing landscape and in recent times, I think that this is such an important piece of media for us in the big 2026. So yeah, let's just keep getting more woke. And I'll probably follow Connor's story and Hudson Williams' other projects. I don't know how long this hyperfixation will last, but we'll see how long it lasts. And we'll see how long I do science and read smut while doing science, I guess. So finally, acknowledgements. Please don't find my orc ID. If you do find me, please cite me. That would be really awesome. I already said this. I have nothing left to say about this franchise until season 2 comes out. 3, I'm really self-centered. That's why I make these little videos. I love making little podcasts to listen to myself talk because I feel like I'm the smartest person in my head, even though that's completely untrue. I will make more non-videos for the sake of it. Really want to make some poetry videos, like write a poem, even though every single poem I've ever written is really bad. Maybe it'll be like how to passage your cells, how to image on a confocal microscope. That would be kind of fun. Shout out to the book I'm writing. It's pretty awesome. Is it ever going to get finished? I don't know, but I fuck with it. So, shout out to Rachel Reed. Thank you for blessing us with this beautiful story. Shout out to every actor in the show. The writer was his name Jacob, I think. Shout out to all of them. Sorry, I'm burping. And I don't edit these, so we're going to get the burp in there. Finally, shout out to creatine and fiber gummies, really getting me through it. I love my fiber gummies. I don't know what brand it is, but this is the year of fiber. Everyone eat your fiber. Colon cancer is on the rise. I think especially for women, like younger women. And I was going to say Asian people. I'm just Asian. So if you're not eating fiber, eat your fucking fiber. And that's it.